People misunderstand silence because they are trained to fear it. In a world built on reaction, explanation, and constant emotional output, silence is often interpreted as surrender, as if the absence of words means you lost, gave up, or had nothing left to offer. But in the Stoic sense, silence rarely signals defeat. More often, it marks the precise moment you stopped leaking your energy into places where it was never protected. It is the moment you realize that not every wound needs an audience, not every injustice needs a response, and not every misunderstanding deserves your breath. Stoicism teaches that peace does not arrive when others finally understand you. Peace arrives when you no longer need them to. Most people assume regret is caused by losing someone loudly through conflict or final arguments. In reality, regret most often begins when the noise ends, when there is no more reaction to feed on, no more emotional access to exploit, no more version of you trying to explain, justify, or be heard. Silence becomes a mirror, and mirrors are deeply uncomfortable for those who spent years avoiding their own reflection. When you step back without drama, without announcement, and without bitterness, people are often left alone with memories they never examined, moments they dismissed, lines they crossed, assuming you would always stay, always clarify, always absorb. From a Stoic perspective, this is not punishment. Stoicism is not revenge disguised as calm. It is self-governance. It is the discipline of knowing what belongs to you and what does not. Other people's remorse, confusion, or delayed regret is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is your inner state, your judgments, and your choices. When you stop reacting, you are not harming anyone. You are reclaiming yourself. You are withdrawing attention from what erodes your character and returning it to where it belongs. This is where the Stoic path begins, not with control over others, but with order within yourself. First comes defense, learning to protect your inner world from constant disturbance. Then, clarity, seeing people and situations as they are, not as you hoped they would become. And finally, rebirth, becoming someone who moves through life with quiet strength, no longer pulled by approval, resentment, or the need to be understood. Silence plays a role in all three stages, not as a tactic, but as a natural consequence of inner alignment. In modern culture, silence is often labeled avoidance. Stoicism reframes it as discernment. You do not owe reactions to those who provoke you. You do not owe explanations to those who already know what they did. And you do not owe continued access to those who treat your presence as disposable. When you choose peace, something subtle but profound shifts inside you. You begin to notice that much of your exhaustion never came from what happened, but from how much you tried to fix, justify, or endure it. This path is not about becoming cold or emotionally unreachable. Stoicism does not ask you to suppress feeling. It asks you to place feeling under the guidance of reason and virtue. This is not instruction on how to make others regret hurting you through silence used as a weapon. Regret, when it appears, is not something you manufacture. It is something others arrive at on their own, when access to your energy is no longer guaranteed. What you gain on this path is far more valuable than validation. You gain steadiness, the kind that allows you to remain calm in situations that once consumed you, the kind that lets you walk away without needing the last word, and the kind that restores your dignity without damaging anyone else. That is the promise of the Stoic path, not dominance, not control, but sovereignty over yourself. In the moments ahead, we will explore 7 quiet behaviors that reflect this sovereignty. They are not techniques to intimidate or manipulate. They are expressions of inner order. Each one represents a shift from reaction to response, from attachment to clarity, from emotional noise to quiet strength. You do not need to force them. As you listen, you may recognize that you have already begun practicing some of them without realizing it. That recognition is important. It means you are not starting from nothing. It means you are already further along this path than you think. One of the first real shifts on the Stoic path is almost invisible from the outside. Nothing dramatic happens. There is no confrontation, no announcement, no emotional display. What changes is internal. You begin to notice more, but respond less. Not because you feel nothing, and not because you are detached from life, but because you have learned the true cost of immediate reaction. Stoicism teaches that between what happens to you and how you respond to it, there is a narrow space where freedom lives. Most people never enter that space. They react instantly, driven by habit, emotion, or the need to defend themselves, and then wonder why the same conflicts keep repeating. When you learn to observe without reacting, you quietly step out of that cycle. Observation without reaction is not passivity, it is discipline. It is the ability to remain present with discomfort without immediately discharging it onto someone else. Anger can be dismissed. Tears can be ignored. Arguments can be twisted and reframed. But calm awareness, combined with silence, leaves very little room to hide. When you stop reacting, people are often forced to face their own behavior without the distraction of your emotional response. This is not because you intend to expose them, but because truth becomes clearer when resistance disappears. In Stoic terms, you are no longer adding unnecessary judgments to what already exists. You are simply seeing things as they are. This takes strength. The urge to react is powerful because it promises relief. Defending yourself feels like regaining control. Explaining feels like restoring balance. Correcting feels like protecting your image. But each reaction often feeds the very dynamic that drains you. When you refrain, you reclaim something subtle but vital: autonomy. You are no longer being pulled by provocation. You are choosing your response instead of surrendering it. Many people confuse calm with weakness because they rely on emotional chaos to feel powerful. When you do not give the reaction they expect, the dynamic shifts. Not outwardly at first, but internally. You begin to notice how much energy you once spent trying to be understood by people who were never listening. You see how often your words were taken out of context, minimized, or used against you. Stoicism does not ask you to prove your innocence or clarify your intentions endlessly. It asks you to act with integrity and allow outcomes to unfold without attachment. From the Stoic perspective, this behavior belongs to the stage of defense. You are learning to protect your inner world by refusing to let every stimulus rearrange your state. You are not shutting down emotionally. You are setting a boundary around your attention. Attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess. Where you place it determines what grows inside you. When you stop reacting impulsively, you redirect that attention inward towards steadiness, reflection, and self-command. Over time, something changes. You realize that not every situation requires your participation, not every comment deserves a reply, not every provocation needs correction. This realization is liberating. It lightens your emotional load and sharpens your perception. You begin to see people more clearly, without the fog of reactivity. And in that clarity, your silence no longer feels like restraint. It feels like choice. This is the first quiet behavior on the Stoic path: to observe without reacting, to remain present without being pulled apart, to let events pass through your awareness without letting them reorganize your inner order. It is not loud, it is not visible, but it is foundational. Without this discipline, none of the others can exist. With it, the Stoic path begins to take shape from the inside out. There comes a moment on the Stoic path when you realize that explanation is not always an act of honesty. Sometimes it is an act of hope. The hope that if you choose the right words, soften your tone, or explain yourself one more time, the other person will finally understand, take responsibility, or change. Stoicism invites you to examine that impulse without judgment, not to silence yourself out of bitterness, but to recognize when explanation has quietly turned into self-betrayal. Detachment begins the moment you stop trying to convince people of truths they already recognize but refuse to face. In Stoic terms, detachment is not coldness, it is clarity. It is the quiet decision to withdraw emotional investment from situations that repeatedly violate your values. You are not erasing care. You are relocating it to where it can exist without harming your character. When you detach without explaining, you are no longer negotiating your boundaries. You are honoring them. This shift often feels uncomfortable at first, especially for those who were accustomed to your availability, your patience, and your willingness to clarify yourself again and again. What makes this behavior powerful is not the silence itself, but the absence of justification. Dysfunctional dynamics thrive on endless dialogue, not to resolve anything, but to maintain control. The more you explain, the more material you provide for reinterpretation, dismissal, or blame. Stoicism teaches that your duty is not to be understood by everyone. Your duty is to act in accordance with reason and virtue. Once you have done that, further explanation becomes optional, not required. Detachment is the moment you accept a difficult truth. Some people are not confused, they are simply unwilling. As you move from defense into clarity, this behavior marks a turning point. You begin to see that arguing does not create alignment, it only prolongs imbalance. Detachment shortens the distance between what you know internally and how you live externally. There is no announcement, no dramatic withdrawal. You simply stop engaging where engagement costs you your inner stability. And in that stillness, something revealing happens. Without your explanations to lean on, others are left with their own actions, unsoftened and unfiltered. From the inside, detachment feels like relief mixed with grief. Relief because the pressure to fix, manage, or endure dissolves. Grief because you finally accept that what you hoped for may never arrive. Stoicism does not deny this sadness. It teaches you to carry it without allowing it to harden into resentment. You are not detaching to make someone feel your absence. You are detaching because remaining attached to disrespect slowly erodes your character. This is where clarity takes shape. You begin to distinguish between effort and overextension, compassion and self-sacrifice, understanding and endurance. Detachment without explanation restores a sense of dignity that arguments often strip away. You no longer need to perform your pain for it to be valid. You no longer need validation for your withdrawal to be justified. Your calm distance speaks not as a message to others, but as a commitment to yourself. On the Stoic path, this behavior signals growth. It is the moment you stop asking how to make them understand and start asking what preserves your inner order. That single question changes everything. As clarity settles, another transformation begins to take shape, one that is often misunderstood by those watching from the outside. Your calm deepens, but it no longer depends on circumstances behaving well. Your kindness remains, but it is no longer limitless or automatic. In Stoic terms, this is steadiness, a state where your inner balance is no longer negotiated through reaction, compliance, or emotional exposure. Many people believe calmness means suppression and kindness means availability. Stoicism rejects both assumptions. Calmness is not the absence of feeling, it is the presence of self-command. Kindness is not self-sacrifice, it is virtue, guided by reason. When you stay calm and kind without granting access, you demonstrate mastery over yourself rather than submission to others. This is where Stoic strength becomes visible, not through dominance, but through restraint. In moments where reaction is expected, your composure interrupts the familiar pattern. You do not escalate. You do not withdraw emotionally. You remain steady. This steadiness often unsettles those who rely on emotional volatility to feel in control. They are prepared for anger, defensiveness, or explanation. They are rarely prepared for quiet dignity. Calmness functions like order. It does not argue with disorder. It reveals it. Emotional chaos thrives on engagement. When you respond with steadiness, imbalance becomes apparent without you having to point it out. Kindness at this stage becomes intentional rather than reflexive. You are respectful without being porous. You are humane without being available for harm. Stoicism teaches that virtue must be chosen freely to retain its strength. Kindness offered out of fear, obligation, or the desire to keep peace at any cost is not virtue, it is compliance. When you remain calm and kind without granting emotional access, you protect your character while refusing to fuel dysfunction. This is not indifference, it is alignment. From a Stoic perspective, this behavior represents a test. Can you act with virtue even when it brings no reward? Can you remain kind without hoping it will change the other person? Can you stay calm without needing the situation to resolve in your favor? When calmness and kindness are detached from outcome, they become expressions of inner order rather than tools for influence. Over time, you may notice a subtle internal shift. Situations that once drained you lose their intensity. Your nervous system settles more quickly. Your energy returns because it is no longer scattered through constant emotional labor. Calm becomes your baseline rather than something you struggle to maintain. Kindness becomes selective rather than compulsive. You give it where it aligns with respect and withhold it where it would enable harm. This stage deepens clarity. You are no longer managing peace externally. You are embodying it internally. Stoicism does not ask you to correct others. It asks you to govern yourself. And when self-governance is consistent, your presence alone communicates boundaries without confrontation. This is steadiness, quiet, grounded, unmovable, not because nothing affects you, but because you have learned what deserves access to your inner world and what does not. As steadiness takes root, a final temptation often surfaces quietly. It does not arrive as anger, but as a subtle desire for justice to be immediate and visible, a wish for acknowledgement, for recognition of harm, for the other person to finally understand what they lost. Stoicism does not deny this instinct, it simply refuses to obey it. The moment you seek revenge, even in its most silent and refined forms, you surrender your inner freedom back to the very situation you were trying to leave behind. Revenge keeps your attention tethered to the past. It asks you to rehearse the injury, to revisit the moment again and again, hoping closure will appear if you think about it long enough. Stoicism offers a different path. It teaches that time, not retaliation, is the great equalizer. People carry the weight of their actions long after you stop engaging with them. Not always publicly, not always dramatically, but inevitably. When you withdraw without resentment, without commentary, without the need to be seen as right, you align yourself with reality rather than ego. This is not passivity, it is discipline. You focus on what is within your control and release what never was. Trusting time means accepting that you do not need to witness consequences for them to exist. Your healing does not depend on their remorse. Your peace does not require their realization. In Stoic terms, this is the movement from clarity into rebirth. You begin to understand that withholding revenge is not moral superiority. It is freedom. Each thought of retaliation binds you tighter to what already harmed you. Each act of restraint loosens that bond. Gradually, your attention shifts away from what was taken and toward what can still be built. The future regains weight. The past loses its grip. Stoicism never promised fairness on your terms. It promised inner order, regardless of external outcomes. When you trust time, you stop measuring progress by whether others regret their actions. You measure it by your own steadiness, by how rarely your thoughts return to what no longer serves you, by how easily you breathe where tension once lived. This is not indifference, it is resolution. You are no longer defined by the injustice. You are no longer shaped by the need to balance the scales. You let life do what life does best. Reveal truth slowly, without your interference. Rebirth does not arrive as a dramatic transformation. It arrives as a quiet release. You move forward lighter, not because the world changed, but because you stopped carrying what was never yours to correct. In the final stage of the Stoic path, Something quiet but decisive occurs. The need to explain fades, not because you became indifferent, but because you became aligned. For a long time, explanation may have felt necessary. Necessary to be seen, necessary to be understood, necessary to justify why you changed, why you stepped back, why you no longer engage the way you once did. Stoicism invites you to release that impulse. Growth that is real does not require witnesses. It does not argue for its legitimacy. It expresses itself through how you live. When you stop explaining your growth, you are not being dismissive. You are acknowledging a simple truth. Your evolution is not a debate. Some people will sense the change intuitively. Others will misunderstand it completely. Neither response requires correction. In Stoic terms, this is completion. You are no longer managing perception. You are no longer curating narratives to protect your image. You allow actions, consistency, and time to speak where words once tried and failed. This does not make you closed off. It makes you grounded. Your energy is no longer scattered across justifications and clarifications. It becomes centered, steady, and self-contained. Silence at this stage is no longer effort. It is identity. You are not silent to provoke reflection or regret in others. You are silent because your inner world is ordered. You no longer feel compelled to revisit old wounds, to correct misunderstandings, or to re-enter roles that required you to abandon yourself. A quiet departure is not escape. It is the natural result of no longer belonging to what disturbs your inner order. Stoicism teaches that dignity is preserved not by winning arguments, but by choosing where you place your attention. Your time and energy are finite. Where you invest them determines the quality of your life. When you walk away calmly, without resentment or announcement, life continues. And yet something irreversible has changed. Your presence is no longer guaranteed. Your patience is no longer automatic. Your peace is no longer negotiable. The consequences that follow are not yours to deliver. They arise on their own, shaped by time, memory, and absence. Stoicism reminds you not to turn back to observe them. The moment you do, you risk stepping out of alignment again. Completion means moving forward without needing confirmation. Closure is not something others give you. It is something that happens when your thoughts no longer orbit what was lost, wronged, or misunderstood. When silence feels natural rather than forced. When distance feels like space rather than punishment. When calmness is no longer practiced, but inhabited. This is the quiet strength Stoicism offers. Not control over others, but sovereignty over yourself. Not a dramatic ending, but a stable continuation. A life guided by reason does not seek to be remembered for its exits. It simply moves forward, intact and unburdened. If something in this reflection stayed with you, there is no need to rush past it. Stoic wisdom works best when it settles quietly and reshapes how you move through the world without announcement. What matters is not agreement, but alignment. Not reaction, but the calm decision to live with self-respect. You do not need to explain your silence. You do not need to justify your distance. When your inner world is ordered, your life speaks quietly on your behalf.